All right, well, happy Friday, Central Georgia. I'm meteorologist Ansley Parker, and we are going to take our extended dive into the forecast. And we're going to start by talking about the tropics. Now, for the last couple of days, we have been watching multiple potential tropical systems, really, and then ultimately one true tropical system over here in the Atlantic. Right now, where things stand, we are watching these same two areas. You may remember they are called invests from the National Hurricane Center. But it is starting to look like the promise is falling apart just a little bit. So in case you missed it, earlier this week on Wednesday, we actually did get our third named storm of the season. That was Tropical Storm Cristobal. It formed way up here in the northern Atlantic, about 1,000 miles off the northeastern coast of Bermuda. It didn't last very long. It formed at 11 a.m. that morning, and by the next morning at 5 a.m., it had already dropped down to a tropical depression and a remnant low pressure system by later that day. So a very short-lived tropical storm that did not impact any land masses was Cristobal. But at the same time, these two areas that were kind of off the west coast of Africa were still being monitored for potential tropical development, and they still are. Now, what you're looking at right here is a low pressure system that has been deemed Invest 92L. Now, I say this every now and then just as a reminder, but Invest is really just a term that the National Hurricane Center gives an area of potential tropical development when they decide that it's worth looking into a little bit further, if they're worth investigating, basically. So this Invest was designated earlier this week. Also, an Invest tends to mean that the National Hurricane Center is pretty confident that something is going to become a tropical system at some point in its life cycle. So Invest is when we usually start paying pretty close attention to an area of potential tropical development. This was Invest 92L, but what started as a pretty promising low pressure system that was pushing into a pretty conducive environment for tropical development over the last week or so has now started to enter an environment of what we call very high wind shear. Essentially, what wind shear does for tropical systems is it creates a bunch of disruption when it comes to the vertical organization of a tropical system. So if you think about it, we tend to see those really impressive eye walls with strong tropical systems and strong hurricanes. That is because there's not a lot of vertical wind shear, so the winds are able to kind of stack vertically and create this really impressive storm. When there's a bunch of wind shear, essentially that means winds coming in from a bunch of different directions, and that makes it really difficult for tropical systems to organize their center of circulation and then ultimately build vertically. So lots of wind shear over here towards the Windward Islands, specifically over here towards the Lesser Antilles. We actually had another area of potential tropical development that died out in this exact same region because the wind shear was so high. So what went from a pretty promising system, high chances of overall tropical development, has now dropped down to low chances of overall tropical development. It now sits at only a 20% chance of development over the next 7 days, excuse me. So I likely think that this is probably going to die out into nothing. The shower and thunderstorm activity is already becoming much more disorganized and pretty far separated from what we would consider to be the center of circulation with this system. So not that we're necessarily sad about that. I mean, we don't necessarily need to see a tropical system form, but that's kind of why things have taken a turn towards this really not looking like it's going to become anything anymore. But hot on its tail was a tropical wave that rolled off the west coast of Africa, one we've been watching over the last couple of days. Another Invest. This is actually Invest 94L. If you're curious why we went from 92 to 94, Tropical Storm Cristobal was actually Invest 93L before it ended up becoming a tropical storm. So this is 94. It's the same situation. It was a tropical storm or a tropical wave that rolled off the west coast of Africa. It created a low pressure system over here in what we call the main development region of the Atlantic. And then it had some disorganized shower and thunderstorm activity around it. This is kind of how most tropical systems get started. It's usually in that order of events. So that's exactly what we've seen with this low pressure system. This is now expected to drift along this same region here. And what's important about this area is that this area that it's moving into has some pretty high sea surface temperatures and has decently low wind shear, as well as it's kind of below where the Saharan dust is actually sitting. So this region right here, basically before we get up to 92L, is a pretty conducive environment for continued tropical development. But again, it has to happen kind of in this region, or else it's going to run into the same issues that this tropical system, or 92L, I should say, is running into, which is that there's high wind shear as you get closer and closer to the Leeward Islands. So we'll see how this goes as we go throughout the next couple of days. It needs to kind of creep a little bit further before we're going to see any more development of it. A 30% chance of development over the next 2 days. So this is likely another system we're going to have to watch throughout the next week. It's got higher chances of development over the next week, sitting at about 50% chance of development. So medium chances with this system. it's worth keeping our eye on, but at the very least, it does look like there could be hints of the same thing happening to this one that's happening to this one, of just overall, the Atlantic is kind of a hostile environment for tropical systems right now. So far this season, we have only had 3 named storms. One of those was Cristobal, which was extremely short-lived and obviously very unimpressive. So we're off to a fairly slow start when it comes to the season as a whole. If 94L is able to get itself together and become a tropical system, the next name on the list would be the D name, the 4th name, which is Dolly. So we'll kind of have to see how that plays out. But again, overall, the Atlantic is just kind of difficult for tropical systems to get started in right now. Normally at this time of year, we actually tend to see a huge uptick in the amount of activity that we see in the Atlantic. And yes, we're seeing an uptick, but due to really primarily what I mentioned before, the strong wind shear and also a lack of very high sea surface temperatures and some increased Saharan dust, it's just not a great environment for tropical systems to form at this present time. So a slow start to the season that I don't necessarily think anybody is complaining about. It will be interesting as we approach the peak of the season, as we head about a month from now into September, to see where things stand and if this very strong El Nino pattern has a big effect on us as we get to the peak of the season. Obviously, it's something we'll just kind of have to see how it goes as we get there. But El Nino has been the primary cause for this quiet start of the season. So that's the kind of thing going on in the tropics right now, but we also have a lot of weather going on back here in central Georgia. We'll talk more about that when we come back. All right, well, welcome back. Obviously, not a ton to know about the tropics, but it's definitely still important to check in on where we stand with the season. But we have got a jam-packed situation back here in central Georgia when it comes to our own forecast. So let's dive into the details of what you can expect, especially as we head into the very first Football Friday night tonight and the upcoming weekend. Just a lot of details that you need to know for both of those things. Looking out at the satellite or the sky cams right now, we're seeing nice blue skies out there. It's a beautiful start to the day. And really, you're kind of familiar with this by this time because that's a pattern that we've been on for the last several weeks. Just nice starts to the day that ultimately do lead us back to rain chances by the afternoon. And that will happen today as well. But I actually continue to think that heat is still one of our most prevalent stories. Now, yesterday I showed this map. It kind of just gives a depiction of where this heat dome is set up. So it's basically a high pressure system that's driving a lot of the flow for kind of basically all the areas that you see here in orange. It's driving all of the flow to come in from the south and from the southwest. Now, what that ultimately does is, one, filter in warmer air because there's warmer air over the Gulf, but two, it also filters in a lot of moisture. So we're not only just nice and hot in terms of the actual air temperature, we have a lot of humidity in our atmosphere, and that also kind of aids into the rain chance as well, because if you think about it, our atmosphere having so much moisture in it makes there be a lot of available moisture for showers and thunderstorms. So it does play into both things, but it definitely plays into the numbers, probably more so. So this is kind of the driving feature of our atmosphere right now, and it's not just for us. In fact, things could actually be worse. It is going to be a lot hotter over here in places like Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, because they're getting true southerly flow. So they're just kind of getting the bulk of the warmer air. We do definitely still have some warmer air, but again, it could always be worse. Perspective is important. So here's how temperatures stand across central Georgia right now. Mostly upper 80s, but we are starting to find a couple of 90s in the picture. This is pretty much exactly where we were this time yesterday. Temperatures were finding their way into the 90s, but overall, not terrible just yet. But of course, we have all of this really high humidity in our area. When we talk about this key at the top of your screen, we use the colors most often. So you can see the dark green color indicates we have high humidity up in that muggy category when we're talking about the humidity. But the numbers themselves also tell a story. The dew point values. When dew point values are in the upper 70s, that is already oppressive. But when you start to see 80-degree dew points, I mean, that is when we're talking about just downright disgusting air, where it's almost hard to breathe when you step outside. So we have some really high humidity and lots of moisture in our atmosphere. So of course, right now at 11 in the morning, outside it's already feeling like we're at 110 degrees over in Dublin. Most places feeling right around 100 to 102, maybe as high as 106 over in our northeastern counties. There's no other way to spin it. It's extremely warm once you start to factor in the humidity and how that ends up making you feel. And this is not the only day that we're going to end up having a heat index like that. In fact, you see the heat alerts. We have got heat alerts across the majority of the entire country. It's not just us, but we are under a heat alert for the rest of today, and actually one that extends all the way into tomorrow. So I want to talk about that time frame for just a second. You can see at the top of your screen, this heat advisory goes from noon today all the way until 8 p.m. tomorrow. Now, it's mainly for the fact that the feels like temperatures are going to get up to 110 degrees, but it is important that the heat advisory goes into the overnight hours. Obviously, we're not going to have temperatures in the overnight hours that feel like 110 degrees, but what the National Weather Service is doing by continuing this through the overnight into Saturday is saying, hey, in the overnights, there's really not going to be a ton of relief. We're only going to be somewhere in the mid 70s in terms of the low temperature, and other cities outside of central Georgia, places like Atlanta, places like Athens that this National Weather Service office also forecasts for, they're experiencing overnight lows that are basically breaking records for how warm they are. Athens last night got down to 78 in the overnight hours, and Atlanta only got down to 75. Obviously, we kind of do that a lot here, so it's not quite as big of a deal for us, but it is just important to know there's not going to be a ton of relief. Your AC is going to be cranking all day and all night because the overnights are going to continue to be nice and warm. But this 110 feels like value is reserved for the heat of the day. It's going to feel like 110 in most places. And this is something to watch because 110 is kind of that magic number where if we start going above that widespread across our area, that's when the National Weather Service may start finding us in extreme heat criteria. You can actually already see there are a couple of extreme heat warnings down towards the coast. Extreme heat is when we're talking about heat that truly is dangerous. It puts more people at risk for heat-related illness. So this is going to be something that we need to pay attention to for the next couple of days. If our actual air temperature starts to climb a bit higher, we may find ourselves under extreme heat criteria as well. But for now, it is just a heat advisory, and we'll be in that all the way from this afternoon until late night Saturday night. Some sort of heat criteria will be met as we go into Sunday and the early work week. We just kind of have to figure out and wait to see what that heat criteria actually is. So the high temperature today is going to be 95 degrees, only a few degrees above what we did yesterday, but still on that warming trend where we'll be in the upper 90s by the time we get to the weekend. It's not all a story of heat, though. With all that moisture in the atmosphere, we still continue to support rain chances, and we'll have rain chances as we go throughout this afternoon and into this evening. Now, this is a very important day to be talking about rain chances because, of course, we have Football Friday night tonight, and it's a weekend coming up. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about what you can expect in terms of shower and thunderstorm chances. There's also a storm prediction center risk that I want to break down. We'll go over all of that in detail with the latest future view model as well, coming up here right after the break. Stay with us. All right, well, thanks so much for sticking with us. Let's dive right now into the rain chances for the next couple of days because this hit or miss shower and thunderstorm pattern that we've had is going to stick with us for quite some time. Of course, that's very important. Tonight is a big night across central Georgia. We do have our first night of football Friday night. If you're planning on heading out, you're worried about getting wet in the stands or you're worried about game delays. Here's kind of the breakdown that I think is on the table for tonight. So we have this unfortunate rain chance because it's unpredictable. We can't necessarily say where showers and storms are going to set up for the rest of the day because it's really just dependent on where there's enough available fuel and where there's enough available energy for showers and thunderstorms to get started. So they're going to pop up across the area at random, which means every county in central Georgia needs to be aware there could be a shower or thunderstorm at some point throughout the rest of the day and into this evening. The silver lining with this is kind of similar to last night. The storm started to wind down as we headed into the evening. I think we could be in store for that tonight as well. By the time we get to maybe 8 p.m. tonight, I think a lot of activity is really going to start to fizzle out. I know that probably would cause a couple of delays if we do still have showers and thunderstorms around that time. But hopefully that does mean if there is a delay, it shouldn't have to last for too long and games should still be able to play tonight. That's kind of my hope. But if you're heading out to a game, pack your patience and also pack your rain gear because if you're stuck in the stands, you may encounter a brief shower or a thunderstorm, especially throughout tailgate time, but hopefully tapering off by the time we get to kickoff. It is also going to be very hot. I feel like every single year we have a pretty mild start to August. As soon as football is back, the temperatures skyrocket back up into the mid-90s. So that's exactly the case for tonight. It's very fitting. We'll be in the 80s as the sun starts to go down, and we'll stay in the 80s as we approach the end of game time. Remember, not a lot of relief in the overnights, so expect it to still be pretty warm and muggy as we approach the end of the games. But this is the pattern. We know this drill by now. We're kind of experts at this point. The morning times are nice, clear, and quiet, and then by the time we get to the afternoons, that's when the rain chance starts to enter the picture. You can see exactly that happening right now just over to our west. A couple of showers and storms popping up near Columbus and Americus, and we'll start to see some here in our area before too long as well. This is what the future view says about it. Just a few spotty showers and thunderstorms here across our area, but like I said, I think by the time we get to the evening, the models have been pretty consistent about this. The activity does look like it's going to start to die down and hopefully stay nice and fizzled out as we approach the late night hours. So I'm hoping even if there is a shower or storm, it won't last for too long and hopefully we can lose it and then get games going as we go into the rest of this evening. But be prepared to do it all over again on Saturday because the atmospheric pattern does not switch up for the weekend. So it's the same situation for both Saturday and Sunday. As you wake up Saturday morning, we'll stay nice and clear, but by the time we get to Saturday afternoon, more pop-up showers and thunderstorms. It'll just kind of be scattered activity across our area. Similar to today, it'll last until Saturday evening, and then things will kind of start to fizzle out as we head into late night Saturday night. Now, the thing I will mention is recently, as of the last couple of hours, the Storm Prediction Center did add us into a level 1 of 5 risk for Saturday. This is really kind of almost on the table for every single day, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. But just to give you a heads up, I'm going to come back to Saturday here in a moment. Sunday, still same pattern, clear morning, and then as we get into Sunday afternoon, here comes all the scattered activity once again, and it sticks with us until things start to wind down on Sunday evening. So it's really cut and dry when it comes to the rain chances. We've been doing this for so many days, and we're pretty aware of how this pattern goes by now. But here is that Storm Prediction Center risk I was just talking about. This is the day 2 risk, so this is actually for Saturday. But you may remember yesterday we were not in a Storm Prediction Center risk, and we actually did have several severe thunderstorm warnings throughout the afternoon. So with this pattern that we're under, because these storms are just tapping into available daytime fuel, there's basically always the possibility that we could get a couple of isolated severe thunderstorm warnings. You know this by now. That's how summer goes here in central Georgia. We kind of always have that storm potential on the table. So Saturday is really no different. Sometimes when the Storm Prediction Center feels a bit more confident about the possibility of a few isolated severe thunderstorm warnings, they will go with a level 1 risk for our area, and that's what they've done for Saturday. So it's just something to keep in mind. There could be a slightly higher potential for there to be 1 or 2 strong to severe thunderstorms throughout the day on Saturday, but overall the impact remains the same. If you catch a shower or a thunderstorm at any point, it could start to become strong, mainly in the form of bringing some damaging wind gusts, some heavy downpours, which we've definitely experienced over the last few weeks, and some frequent lightning. I saw a lot of the lightning yesterday as I was driving on I-16. We have just had some really, really strong lightning over the last couple of weeks. So really, the experience remains the same. It's just a slightly higher potential for a few more storms to try to become a little bit spicy as we go throughout the day on Saturday. But Other than that, you see I've kept the rain chance the same. The weekend is pretty copy and paste. High temperatures will still be pretty hot as we go throughout Saturday and Sunday. The actual highs will likely climb into the mid to upper 90s. Of course, as you know by now, that means that the heat index is probably going to be near 110. It possibly could be even higher as we head into Sunday. So heat definitely still a very prevalent part of our conversation. Even with the rain chances still being present, we still have the opportunity for some big time heat every single day and potentially even higher heat as we head into early next week. So I'm going to go over all the details on that heat. We'll talk more about your 7-day forecast as well when we come back. All right, well, we have covered all things rain chances here for the weekend, but really temperatures are the thing that we need to be paying attention to. So let's talk about where things stand right now in terms of the month of August. Now, yesterday, I really went out of my way to emphasize the fact that we've had a lot of below average days, but when you look at the actual numbers themselves when it comes to below average, I mean, we have really only been a degree or two below the actual average high. The average high for this time of year right now is 93 degrees, and even on our above average days, we've only gone a degree above the average. So we've been hovering right around where we should be for this time of year when it comes to the actual air temperature. Now, we've talked a lot about how that's going to start to change. But yesterday, we caught a shower here in Macon. So when we had the sensor at the Middle Georgia Regional Airport, it actually recorded a temperature of 93. So it never actually quite made it that high here in this area, but it's very dependent on where the rain chances actually end up setting up. I had a high temperature yesterday of 95 forecasted. That's exactly what I have for today as well. That kind of just includes the areas that are going to stay dry through the day. Most places will kind of hover right around the low 90s, but if you're dry all day, that temperature can just keep on soaring with nothing to get in its way. So it's going to be a very warm afternoon no matter what. I showed you the surface temperatures a moment ago, but here's also a look at the upper levels of the atmosphere. As we go all the way through the weekend and into early next week, this high pressure dome just continues to sit over our area, really along the Gulf Coast here, and it just heats temperatures up along its vicinity. So this pressure system goes nowhere as we go through the weekend all the way into early next week, ultimately driving our temperatures up as we go through the next couple of days. So we're still going to be somewhere in the mid to upper 90s through Saturday and through Sunday. By the time we turn the corner, though, on early next week, dependent on what the rain chances end up doing, if we kind of see some lower coverage when it comes to showers and storms, our high temperatures area-wide could be right near the triple-digit mark. Now, yesterday we were kind of in a little bit of a debate as a weather team as do we go 100 or do we not? Model data was kind of going back and forth about that. Right now we have 99, but very easily we could go from 99 to 100. Just kind of depends on how temperatures warm as we go throughout the day. So when it comes to 100-degree days, we normally see one here in central Georgia, but so far this year we have not seen 100 degrees just yet. The average date that we tend to see 100 degrees, at least in the Macon area, is July 2nd. So we made it well past that average date without seeing a 100-degree day. When it comes to the latest date that we've ever recorded, I really hope we're not dealing with 100-degree temperatures in September, but that is kind of the record when it comes to the latest date. The earliest we've ever had was May 26th. So we're definitely trending on the later side of that even being in the forecast, but it could be a potential as we go through the next couple of days. Either way, like I said, if you don't get rainfall, expect the feels like numbers to soar well beyond 100. Most days we're going to have feels like numbers that are near 110. And again, it just kind of depends on if you get a shower or storm, that can cool things off temporarily. But otherwise, expect the feels like numbers to be quite oppressive as we go all the way through the weekend and likely into early next week as well. So your 7-day forecast is pretty straightforward. It's mostly a story of heat and also just a story of daily rain chances, scattered showers and thunderstorms every afternoon and evening. And again, the showers and thunderstorms come as a welcome relief to the numbers that you're going to see here. Mid to upper 90s through the weekend with overnight lows in the mid 70s. So nice warm starts to the day. Then by the time we get to early next week, that's where we have those 98 and 99 values. That'll probably be the hottest portion of the week. But even throughout the rest of the work week, we still see high temperatures make their way into the mid to upper 90s every single afternoon. So the biggest trend here, and what's honestly kind of been the most frustrating as a forecaster, is there's just no end to this pattern in sight. Normally we kind of start to get an idea of the next big atmospheric feature moving through that's going to disrupt the pattern. That is not in sight just yet. In all the long range models, we continue to roll right on this roller coaster track as we go throughout the next several days, all the way into the end of the long-term forecast. So for now, this is what we continue to deal with: high heat and some